Hello everyone, my name is Company and greetings from the Bund, Waitang, Shanghai. This city is the top 2 mega city in China along with Beijing, the capital. Lots of tourists gonna pick Shanghai if they have only one chance to visit this country. And this video is General Shanghai Guide. I will tell you what is Shanghai and its background, features, sites, kind of that. Yes, it's time to discover Shanghai.
Shanghai is a direct administrated municipality at the center of China's east coast. The name means upon the sea. First of all, Shanghai has some pretty impressive specs. It has a population of 25 million people, 3 times of Austria, and a land area of 6,340 square kilometers, 4 times of Greater London. But the specs for this Chinese direct administrated municipality are a bit unusual. You shouldn't think of them in the same way as other countries. If you look at Chongqing, the other direct municipality, it is 82,300 square kilometers, 60% of England. But this huge area is not all of urban city. If you go a little bit outside of the Shanghai city center, and there are rice fields and no skyscrapers. This is the Shanghai you see when you're traveling, usually inside the S20 outer ring road. The area here is about 650 square kilometers, almost half of New York. Even inside here, the area you will be traveling through is, again, about 50 square kilometers. It is almost 55% of Manhattan. All the major tourist destinations are in here. So you don't need to be worried to look around this huge metropolis. After all, Shanghai is the top 2 cities in China, along with Beijing. Beijing in politics, Shanghai in economics. Administratively, it is one of 4 direct administrated municipalities in China. In terms of economy, it is also one of the 4 first-tier cities. Many top Chinese companies headquartered in Shanghai: Pinduoduo, Trip.com, Alipay, and Shanghai Volkswagen. Shanghai also has many Chinese headquarters of major international companies: L'Oreal, Unilever, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Nike, Pfizer, Apple, Tesla. They are very famous names, aren't they? It is interesting that there are no Google, Meta, or other web services companies. Because China blocks the internet a lot, many Chinese big tech in recent years are headquartered elsewhere. But it feels like foreign companies have to be headquartered in Shanghai. But Shanghai's beginning was much later in Chinese history. It is not 1,000 years ago, it is not 500 years ago, it dates back to the mid-19th century. British sold tons of opium to Qing dynasty to cover their trade deficit. The result was the Opium Wars, and UK won. And out of that comes the Treaty of Nanjing. In it, UK get Hong Kong and open up several ports in mainland China. Shanghai was one of them. Qing dynasty would go on to set a number of rights to Western powers. United States, France, and others set up concessions in Shanghai. With a massive capital infusion, Shanghai grew to the leading city in the Far East. The city would go through its heyday as a modern Shanghai until World War II. After the Communist Party unified China, Shanghai and the rest of the country went into an economic dark age. But from 1978, Deng Xiaoping began to open up the economy. Shanghai was the frontrunner of that reform. The languishing pearl of the East began to attract foreign capital again. And everything has changed. Lujiazhu in Pudong is now home of forest of world-class skyscrapers. And other neighborhoods have followed suite and apartments and malls. In these days, other cities in China have also built a lot of skyscrapers. But there is a still strong perception that Shanghai is the center of Chinese economy. With this background, you are now prepared to understand the features of Shanghai. Shanghai is a cosmopolitan city. It has a strong cosmopolitan atmosphere than any other cities in mainland China. Let's be honest. There are a lot of foreigners visiting Shanghai, but you are going to see a lot more Chinese here. Shanghai alone has a population more than 55 million, and there are tons of Chinese tourists traveling from other provinces. So, except a few points, it's all Chinese around you. But even so, Shanghai has cosmopolitan atmosphere. First of all, the development itself started with the opening of the modern port. So, there's a lot of European architectures in the city, so there's a lot of atmosphere. And there are quite a few foreigners in some of those points, like Xintiandi, Jing'an Temple, and the Bund. And Shanghai people are more open-minded than other provinces. Around 2003, there was this argument. Shanghai wanted to put the European architectures of the Bund on the UNESCO World Heritage List, and Beijing was like, why are you proudly displaying the colonial legacy? It didn't actually get on the UNESCO list, but it's an example of Shanghai's tendency to see its modern era as a history of internationalization and development. And Shanghai is rich. In 2023, China's average GDP per capita was 12,600. Shanghai more than doubled that to 27,000. It was second only to Beijing. With such a strong economy, a huge population of 25 million people, and many wealthy foreign workers of big international companies, all the best and most luxurious things in China naturally are in Shanghai. They are glitter, shiny, and gonna make you say, what a Chinese luxury. Not to mention all the tall buildings in Lujiazui. There are 8 Apple stores, the most in China, beating Beijing's 5. Or the enormous Starbucks Reserve Roastery in West Nanjing Road. Shanghai may not have a grandeur of nature, but you will get the grandeur of capital here. Shanghai is full of malls, but there are also gorgeous streets. In the tropics and in Greater China, it tends to be more mall-oriented than vibrant street. Shanghai, of course, have plenty of malls, not just a lot, but tons. There is a mall under every tall building. If you go into residential neighborhoods, there is a mall between apartments. But Shanghai's downtown, especially the old French concession, is different. There are new buildings here, but there's also a lot of effort to preserve the old heritage. And not kind of preservation that just leave things in an old state, but urban renewal, which is a modernization of the old. So you're going to see a lot of classic and sophisticated strip shops that utilize the old heritage and make it modern. For travelers, Shanghai can be divided into 3 big areas: Puxi in the center west, Pudong in the east, and other neighborhoods around Puxi and Pudong. Puxi covers most of the old concession area. It's got all the usual Shanghai tourist spots. Pudong has a most famous for its skyscraper forest, Lujiazui, is also home to the main airport and Disneyland. There are not many places to go, but the few sites are very important. And the outside of those two, they are generally bad town. But there are a few sites scattered throughout, and you will visit them like a short day trip. So let's start with Puxi. The centerpiece here is Huangpu District. Huangpu District includes the core of the public concession, Qing Dynasty Prefecture of Shanghai, and the eastern edge of the French concession. First, west of Huangpu River is the famous Waitan, otherwise known as the Bund. The Bund is made up of 2 main elements. The first is a modern architecture lining the west side of the Huangpu River. Now used to be as banks, hotels, etc. The hotels are like Fairmont, Waldorf Astoria, Peninsula, and very luxury. And the second is the skyscrapers of Lujiazui, looking across the river towards Pudong. It's very iconic view of Shanghai, and that's what you see from the Bund. Let's be clear, it's better in the eyes than on the screen. If I have to visit only one place in Shanghai, it will be here, the Bund. And if you look at the west, about halfway through Waitan, you will see a lot of people. If you follow it, you will come to Nanjing Donglu, Shanghai's main downtown street. It simply means East Nanjing Road. Lu is road or street at Chinese, you should remember this. Whereas the Bund used to be a promenade that wasn't very commercially active, this is now a full-fledged shopping district with malls and shops. Of course, the buildings are classic, as is the core of the old public concession. It is so close to the Bund that it can be considered as a one combo. You will use Nanjing Donglu metro station to get to the Bund. At the western end of this Nanjing Road pedestrian walkway is People's Square. It is the physical and administrative center of Shanghai. There are park, museums, urban planning exhibition, but more importantly, the municipal government building in the center. So the atmosphere is not very pleasure or free. It's very tight controlled area. A lot of people skip it because it's not very fun to wander around. Let's go a little further south. It is an old Chinese prefecture, not a western concession, so unlike the more modern Huangpu district to the north, it's characterized by a lot of old, rickety buildings or developed into apartment. And in the middle of it all, Wian means garden. It is a Chinese garden that dates back to the Ming Dynasty before Qing. It is the most Chinese place in Shanghai, along with Jing'an Temple, which I will talk about later. It is pretty. It's pretty. It's pretty. It's a must-see in Shanghai. West of Wee Garden, south of People's Square, it belonged to the French concession. First, Xintiandi, one of the most famous towns in Shanghai, right here. Xintiandi itself is a modern cafes, restaurant, shops in the old historical Chinese buildings. There's a lot of modern people enjoying around here. Then there are also a lot of very modern and expensive malls around the area. You just look at it and you're like, wow, that's expensive. But it's not all luxury in this neighborhood. There are plenty of other smaller sites. You can visit Sinan Mansions and Tianzifang. Sinan Mansions are similar in old style, but unlike Xintiandi, which is very crowded, it is pretty quiet. Tianzifang is more like a cute souvenir street, especially girls love this small village. More on this in my Shanghai content video. Next is Jing'an District, west of Huangpu District. This is the western part of the old public concession. The name came from the famous temple in here, Jing'an-si. Now it is much more new than the north side of Huangpu District. Of course, it's also very expensive here. Malls, apartments, everything. The centerpiece of traveling in Jing'an is West Nanjing Road, or Nanjing Silu. It leads from East Nanjing Road in Huangpu District. First of all, east of Nanjing Silu Station is the Starbucks Reserve Roastery. From there, it leads to the famous hangout street, Wujianglu, and the pretty classic town, Zhangwen. Wujianglu is a small street with all kinds of food and street shops. Zhangwen is an old street similar to Xintiandi. This old stone architecture style is called Shikuman, but it is not expensive as Xintiandi, so it's more relaxed. And a little further west from there is Jing'an Temple. Chinese style similar to Vivian, but it's a temple, not a garden. It's very big and it's gleaming gold, so it is more impressive than you think. In the square across the Jing'an Temple, there is an Apple store. It is not like other bland Apple stores. It's got an unusual look. Jing'an District also has a part of north to Suzhou River. You can take a train to Nanjing at this Shanghai station. Putuo District is a small neighborhood northwest of Jing'an District. From here, it's a bit more residential. In other words, there's a less to do for the average tourist. However, the neighborhood sites are more quiet, impressive. You may remember M50 along the Suzhou River and Tian'an Qiansu Mall next to it. M50 is similar to Tianzifang, which is an art-themed urban renewal area. But this one is more industrial and serious art. It's small and there's not much shopping, but it is fun to wander around the town. Tian'an Qiansu is known as 10,000 Trees Mall. It is a modern mall with very unusual design. Other malls beat down here in terms of luxury brands and foot traffic, but for its unique beauty, I think it is the best in Shanghai. The next neighborhood to explore is Hongkou District, northeast of Jing'an and Putuo District. I recommend the Lucian Park in here. You can catch lots of old Chinese to exercise in the park. This neighborhood is generally a commoner neighborhood. It's fun to wander the streets and people watch. On the other hand, the east side of Hongkou District, along the Huangpu River, is called North Bund. It's a neighborhood of luxury hotels with great views. Now we change direction and head south. Xihui District and Changning District are the main this time. Xihui is to the east and Changning is to the west, both former French concessions. Overall, in Shanghai, the public concessions are grandly developed, while the French concession is more residential and ordinary. Well, these two districts were in the French concession, so the main experiences here are mainly small streets and buildings. First of all, I marked the famous streets on the map. It looks like this. They are all close together, so if you just walk around, you will naturally visit them all. And the most famous place here is Wukanglu, where the Normandy apartment is. There's a lot of people taking picture of it. You will be surprised how many beautiful places you can find in this street. Columbia Circle, a little bit to the northwest, is also a hot spot. The details and differences between these streets will be covered in my Shanghai content video. Shanghai's other gateway is just west of French concession. If you're taking a domestic flight from Shanghai, you will use this airport. There are lots of foreigners living in Changning District. It was once the first foreign real estate zones when China opened their market to the world. Gubei is now considered one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Shanghai. We can't forget about West Bund. The Huangpu riverfront at the eastern end of Xihui District is a breath of fresh air from the touristy Upper Bund. It's a great place to take a moderate stroll around the Western Art Museum and have a coffee. east of Huangpu River is called Pudong. Most of this Pudong falls under one district called Pudong-nu District. It is a monster at 1,400 square kilometers, more wide than New York City. The centerpiece of the trip here is Lujiazhui, across the river from Waitan. In the 21st century, Lujiazhui has developed into one of China's leading financial districts. This is where you will find all the skyscrapers you see from the Waitan. Here are the main buildings of Lujiazhui. These buildings are definitely special than others. Well, Lujiazhui is a financial district, so there are banks, insurance companies, but there are also hotels, observation decks, and rooftop bars, so you are going to be in here at least once during your trip. From Lujiazhui, head south along the Huangpu River to Expo Park. It's a bit empty park, which can feel a bit lonely. The Chinese Art Museum here served as a small landmark in the area. Third is Disneyland in the middle of Pudong-nu District, the newest one which opened in 2016. It is not super huge, even though it is China or new, but the quality of the facilities is amazing for being new. Zootopia section and Tron attraction in Tomorrowland are popular. Finally, Pudong International Airport, Shanghai's iconic gateway. If you visit Shanghai from overseas, you will enter through here. It is quite far, but the maglev train brings you to the city center in 7 minutes. So the spots in Pudong are pretty scattered, and it's mostly a residential neighborhood with nothing else. But that doesn't mean there are not some good places to visit. First up is Xinchang Water Town, which is a little further away from the Disneyland. Not like other water towns, this is one on the east side of Huangpu River. It is also more natural and less touristy. And then there's a Dishui-hu, which is the last stop on the Metro Line 16. It is an artificial reservoir. Yeah, that's it. Minhang surrounds Puxi to the southwest. It is not as big as Pudong, but is still quite large, 3 from 7 times the size of Paris. First up, just south of the airport is Qibao-Guzhen, a water town. This is the most accessible water town from downtown Shanghai. It's definitely easier to visit than the others. And then a little bit to the northeast of there, Hongqianlu, Shanghai's main Koreatown. Funny thing is, no matter how many Koreans live here, this is China. It is overwhelmingly Chinese. So even though it is a Koreatown, more Chinese people actually walking around. And the Hongqiao train station next to Hongqiao Airport also belongs to Minhang. The high-speed rail to Hong Kong and Guangdong province departs here. Shanghai railway station is too close to the city center, so Hongqiao is practically the main Shanghai station now. There are parks and stuff around here, and this side is near the airport, so buildings are generally fat and low. Of course, Minhang is huge. It is just this neighborhood. Songjiang district, southwest of Minhang, this was the center of the neighborhood before modern era. But the most of content in Shanghai is modern and contemporary, so there's not much to see here. There's Shaoshan, which is the only mountain in Shanghai. It's not very high, about 100 meters above the sea level, so it's basically a hill. And then south of that, Guangfulin Cultural Park. It is about the pre-modern history of Shanghai, but only few foreigners visit both of these places. In Jiading District, northwest of Putuo District, not far from the city center, there's another water town called Nanxiang Guzhen. It is known as the home of Shanghai Xiaolongbao. They've even set up these sculptures. Other than that, it is just normal residential neighborhood. You can't help it. It is a bad town, so there are fewer modern attractions. And finally, Qingpu District, west of Shanghai. The keyword of Qingpu travel is water town. First of all, the farthest point is Zhujiajiao, the most famous water town in Shanghai. Even if you haven't heard of Nanxiang or Xinchang, you've heard of Zhujiajiao. And not far from the Hongqiao airport, on the way to Zhujiajiao, there is a modern shopping mall called Panlong Tiandi. This mall is inspired by Shanghainese water town and very cool. I'm going to recommend here in my content video. Yes, these are the areas inside the Shanghai municipality. Then there are neighboring cities like Suzhou, Hangzhou, Nanjing, Ningbo, but they are not that close to Shanghai. This is China. Nanjing, for example, is almost 300 kilometers away. Birmingham is another neighbor city of London, right? I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but I hope someday I can make videos about them. So let's recap what we learned today. General information about Shanghai metropolis.
Yeah, what do you think? Shanghai seemed so complicated before, but now it doesn't, right? Of course, the real Shanghai is much more complex than this, but I believe this is the best way to understand Shanghai for a single tourist. This place where I end this video is Nanjing East Road. Thank you for watching this long video and thank you again.